On July 20th, 1969, man set foot on the moon. Since then, in the past 52 years, technology has grown 1,500 times. But technology is very, very limited. How can they send 3 people to the moon from Earth? Fresh fries. The first man on the moon. In the 1960s, there was a huge war between the Soviet Union and the United States. That is, the Cold War. Who would go to space first? If this was not a space war, it would be called the space race. The Soviet Union has always been ahead of the United States. They launched the first Sputnik, the so-called satellite. They sent the first animal, a dog, from Earth. And the title of the first man in space went to Yuri Gagarin of the Soviet Union. So while they were still scoring, John F. Kennedy, the then president of the United States, made a public statement in front of 40,000 people. He said, "I am going to send the first man to the moon." From that second, he said it until the 1969 moon landing, the biggest concern was how to make this possible. Not only would they have to successfully send it, but they would also have to come back from there. This event could only be accomplished at this time when the Earth and the Moon are approximately 384,000 kilometers away. 384,000 kilometers away. So think about it. Our Earth is a distance equivalent to hitting it 7 to 8 times. Let alone taking humans that far, they would have to come back. If you look at 3 people who are mentally and physically ready for a journey of 8 lakh kilometers, you will see that they're doing well. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Of these, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are the only 2 people who will walk on the moon. That is, they will be the ones who verwef. The Saturn V, which is about 363 feet tall, is only going to do the job of taking these 3 people from Earth to space. If you look at the compartment of the Saturn V, you can see it. It is the only rocket that has 3 stages of full fuel. The part where the people are here is just a small part, the command module. I mean, literally, it takes such a big rocket to get these people off Earth. It is only this small part that comes back. So they have designed this rocket so precisely that it can come back. July 16th, 1969. Correct, if you see a rocket coming from this Earth, it will be a blast. The horsepower it has produced has never been produced on Earth. This rocket with such a high horsepower is taking off from the Earth. All the people in the world are watching this. They are watching a huge event. People are at the tip of the rocket. If you see it coming at about 4.5 G4, they will feel it when the rocket is going. That is, if you see it, the gravity is 4 times greater than normal gravity. And if you see it, your chest will be affected. So if you look at the first 2 stages, you can see the lunar model in the 3rd stage at the bottom. And when this 3rd stage comes and reaches the parking orbit, it has gone from 190 kilometers to that height from the ground level of the Earth. If you look at the carbon lines, this is the 100th kilometers where space begins. And if you look at it a little higher than that, there is this parking orbit. If you look at the path of that parking orbit, when it completes 1 round, when it comes to the back of the Earth, its engine is activated and you can see that its path is expanding. Simply put, the circle that looks like a normal circle, if you look at it, I've changed it to a blue circle. This timing should be perfectly in sync. Because if the engine is activated correctly, then the moon will be in perfect sync on this side. If you look at it, then on the 3rd day, the moon will be in the correct orbit. So the main thing is that the moon's gravitational force will be in the correct orbit. And if you look at it, the lunar module will enter. If you look at the outer space of stage 3, the lunar module will break, expose. At that time, the service module came a little ahead and turned 180 degrees, and the lunar module was also connected. And if you look at it from the stage 3 rocket, the lunar module will separate. Besides, of course, that stage 3 is not needed. Only these 2 parts are going towards the moon for now. And these 2 parts, they will call the service module Columbia in front of them. That is why the command center is there in front. Not only that, but if you look at the lunar module on this side, they will also separate. The ascent and descent modules are called that because they both have equal fuel. And if you get the necessary fuel, you can use it to land on the moon and return. So right when the moon approaches, 2 people from the command center, Buzz Aldrin and of course Neil Armstrong, will go to the lunar module. Michael Collins is the only one who is very safe. Right now, the service module should be in orbit around the moon. There are 2 people in the lunar module right now. The service module is currently only 1, but it is perfect. On July 20th, the lunar module will separate from the service module. If you look at it, it will separate from the lunar module at a high speed. So now they are hitting the moon at high speed and slowly descending. If you look at the moon, it will almost reach the moon and travel. Now, they are coming in the opposite direction and giving it a little force. If you look at the engine, it is controlling their speed. They have reached the place they thought of by now. You see their speed is decreasing a little, their height is decreasing. That's when Neil Armstrong steps out. The moon is clearly visible. He realizes something else. They've already crossed 3 kilometers from where they're supposed to land. If they keep going like this, the fuel will be completely empty. He says, "I'll take manual control." And he comes and says, "You see, the entire lunar module is in manual control." Neil Armstrong can't even tell where we're going. It's not like a car. So we are at such a height. Looking at that glass-bottomed bus, we are so high, we are so far down. Neil Armstrong said that he would give us information, he would have controlled the Luna capsule. But at this time, the errors started to come. Errors 1202 and 1201. This happened 5 times in total, and it was repeated. Immediately after seeing these errors, the people on Earth couldn't understand anything. The people there couldn't understand anything. Neil Armstrong had already simulated it for a long time. This kind of error never happened. When I checked why it happened, it was due to the computer's memory. So at that time, the computer was a much more expensive technology than your phone, with only 4 megabytes of RAM. At that time, many commands were sent to the system, and the system could not catch them. This is because this radar command wire is constantly running in the background. That's why I got these errors, and I had to remove them. If you had thought about it, you would have thought about it. If you had come and seen it in mid-flight, you could have seen the entire machine. Because if you had seen both Columbia Eagles, they would have been in a free return trajectory. So if some mission had failed or if some system had failed, the fuel could have come back to Earth. They had planned a trajectory for that. So when you were thinking about whether to come and see it or whether to see the entire machine, you wouldn't want to do that. It's a memory issue, it's automatic, and Neil Arms is giving the green light for now. Neil Arms is very patient. He is as patient as he can. The entire lunar module is landing on the surface of the moon. As soon as it touches down, a blue color signal is actually coming from the capsule. As soon as Neil sees this, of course, Armstrong says that the Eagle has landed. And basalt, if you read it, then engine shutdown, and then landing, and then engine shutdown, and so on. This is technically the surface of the moon. The first word spoken was engine shutdown. At that time, they only had 15 seconds of fuel. That is, in the descent stage, in the ascent stage, they had full fuel. Then if you asked them, they would have landed and hit the moon, but they had about 6 hours to check all the systems, pressurize them, and check all their life support systems. After that, they have to sleep for 6 hours. That is, they have to take a short nap. But Neil Armstrong and Basalt must have been very excited. They have put off this sleep time to start their 3-hour moonwalk. As expected, our Neil Armstrong is the first to land. You may ask, who would have been the first to take the camera to that place? If you see Neil Armstrong while he was landing, there is a small handle next to him. He will have to pull it to get down. So it's like a compartment outside the Luna Mall opens and the camera starts to focus on the door. And the live telecast starts to do it. Neil Armstrong checks everything and patiently descends. He places his first footprint on the moon. He says a dialogue as soon as he steps. At that time, when there was no atmosphere on the moon, Neil Armstrong's footprint would never be erased. Until you go and destroy it, Neil Armstrong's footprint will remain in the same place where he landed. The Luna module is about 4 kilometers further from the moon than they thought. However, the landing site is a bit smoother. As soon as they landed, both of them were excited because they said they had baked a moon cake and were almost ready to set foot on the moon as seen from Earth. So they were instructed to sleep. No, we will wait for that sleep time later. When they say that we are ready to do our mission to the moon, they cannot come down immediately. They spend almost 6 hours inside the Luna module. They have taken all the necessary equipment and checked the pressure of the entire cabin because you can't come in by opening the door. That's 10 minutes. If you look at all the life-supporting gears, you'll see that after 6 hours of being ready, Neil Armstrong is descending. When you descend, you'll see the lifebeat button. When you pull it, the whole world is watching Neil Armstrong's first step live. Neil Armstrong is the first man to set foot on the moon. After that, Buzz Aldrin will come out after about 15 minutes. Not only did Neil Armstrong provide the necessary equipment, but this bus also has an equipment. Of course, a camera. You are the first to set foot on the moon. However, it was definitely Buzz Aldrin who used technology on the moon for the first time, because in the Apollo 11 mission, almost all the photos you see related to the moon were taken by Buzz Aldrin. It just started to grow. That is, of course, I was given a separate mission for them. The first thing they said as soon as they landed was that the moon is so beautiful. It is truly a beautiful moon. Not only that, the sand on the moon was more like poppy and powder than they had imagined. The powder itself was as thick as a half cup. If it had gone into their life support gear, the dust would have definitely gotten into their lungs. It would have been disastrous. If you had even looked at their equipment, it would have been damaged. But despite their carefulness, they spent almost half an hour and 15 minutes on the moon's surface. Not only that, the equipment they had packed was ready to go. From the moon, you can calculate the solar winds. If there is an earthquake on the moon, you can calculate it. Also, if you see laser mirrors, you can plan on the moon. That is, you can send a laser from the Earth and the moon can reflect that laser. The point is, you can calculate the distance between the Earth and the moon accurately. While Neil Armstrong was placing all of this on one side, he would take and post various photos of our basalt on the opposite side. Of course, if you look at the American block, it is still there. There is no atmosphere in that place. It is definitely not going to be safe. Knowing that the block would not fly, they had set up wires so that the block would not hang. If you look at the block, it was perfectly designed so that it would not hang. If you look at the Luna capture, you will see a kind of plaque written on it. Humans do not come to this place to fight. They come for peace. From the plan, except for the 1969, as they said, there are no weapons on the Luna platform. There are no weapons, just a camera. At the same time, no one would have called anyone on Earth on a phone call from such a distance. Even our basalty Neil Armstrong said that he would be the first person to talk to him for a while. It is time to leave now. Before leaving, they start loading the capsule with about 23 kilograms of dust and some moon rocks. Additionally, when so many cages come in, they have to unload the necessary items. So they unload a lot of their unnecessary belongings, come in, and repressurize the capsule. So at that time, Neil Armstrong and Basalt are going to this side, and they don't know if they're going to break a button. They haven't seen it yet. As soon as the button comes in, Basil takes a photo again. Neil Armstrong was crying while laughing. I can't even imagine how it would go. But if you think about it, you'll be really happy, and Neil Armstrong mentioned it if you saw it. They have everything ready and they're going to sleep for a while. I blinked and saw that right now. Only one button on their stage is broken. So, there's a girl on this side of the bus already. If you saw that woman saying that she can't touch it with her hands, turn on that button and take the ascent stage from the descent stage and take it out. If you saw that Correcta Columbia also aligned, they would jump from the ground level of the moon. For now, I have only left the ascent stage. If you heard that Directa Columbia has also joined, no. I have circled that moon once. So if you saw that every half circle, its speed is increasing, and only after the last circle, if you saw that the first ascent stage comes and joins. So Michael Collins is not only bringing all the equipment and samples from the ascent stage, they are taking them and not just servicing them. So they don't need that ascent stage right now. They're going to take it, leave from there, and take a 3-day trip back to our land. It is almost the 8th day since they left Earth and are returning home. Not only that, Neil Armstrong and Basalt have spent almost 21 hours on the moon, and they have been involved in their moonwalk for almost an hour. They have said goodbye to the moon and are now heading directly towards Earth. As they approach Earth, the service stage itself, if you look at it from the command deck, is huge. Both of them should be going in a different direction, technically. Some kind of repair work must be going on at the service stage, and if you look at it from the command deck, it is so big that it's almost like a thunderbolt. If you look at the command module on this side, you will see that it has almost hit. It did not cause any damage. So, command and service both came and saw that it fell into the Pacific Ocean. The 3 men parachuted into the Pacific Ocean and successfully landed after 8 days. The whole world is celebrating because 3 men have left Earth, gone to the moon, taken samples, and returned to Earth. It is an incredible thing to see. Immediately, the U.S. Army ship that was there came and saw that all 3 of them were collected and taken into a small boat. They had been in quarantine for almost 21 days. Not only these people, but their equipment and all the samples that were brought with them were kept in quarantine. Researchers knew that even if they said there was no life on the moon, they couldn't be 100% sure, so they kept everything quarantined for 21 days. If you look at them, you'll see that If these three people hadn't returned, they had already prepared a separate speech for the failure of this mission. Thankfully, it was never used. After 21 days, these three were reintroduced to the world. All three of them joined in a grand parade. Everyone was celebrating them. Even the Soviet Union, which had been competing in the Cold War, praised these three men. They had done something no one in history had done before. Humans had set foot on another world. Everyone in the world now knew their names. Science itself became a new kind of hero. The Apollo 11 moon landing mission gave science a massive boost in respect and inspiration among people everywhere. And they say that behind every man's success, there's a woman. In this case, Margaret Hamilton was the woman behind the success of the moon landing. She was the lead software engineer for the Apollo 11 mission. The coding for the AGC Apollo guidance computer was written by her and her team. And if you've ever seen that famous photo of her standing beside a tall stack of papers, those aren't books, but the complete handwritten software codes she and her team wrote for the mission. They wrote codes stacked up to nearly 5 feet tall, and those lines of code helped humans successfully land on the moon. So we should never forget her name along with the astronauts. Margaret Hamilton was truly one of the most important people in the Apollo 11 mission. And Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin shouldn't be celebrated as just Americans landing on the moon. They should be celebrated as humans landing on the moon. This is truly a proud moment for all of humanity, one that changed how we look at ourselves and what we can achieve. It's been more than 50 years since the Apollo 11 mission, and so far, 12 people have actually set foot on the moon. Yet, even with all the proof and data available, some people still believe it was fake, a conspiracy theory that says the Apollo missions never happened. They claim no one has ever left Earth and gone beyond it, that it was all staged. But is any of that true? NASA had proof, tons of it. The astronauts spent time on the moon, then returned safely to Earth. They showed the world evidence, live broadcasts, videos, photos, and even the moon rocks they brought back, which were sent to labs and even gifted to countries around the world. Everything was recorded, documented, and shared openly. NASA even published how much the entire mission cost, completely transparent. Yet some refused to believe it. One of the first to accuse NASA was writer Bill Kaysing, who published a book called We Never Went to the Moon. He claimed that NASA faked the landings using movie magic and stage sets. That book started a wave of conspiracy theories that still continue today. Among the common questions, people ask things like, if Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, who filmed him coming down the ladder? NASA had planned that too. Before Armstrong exited, there was a small camera mounted on the lunar module, connected by a cable. When he pulled that cable, the camera automatically began recording and broadcasting his descent live. That's how the world watched his first step in real time. Another common claim, why is Buzz Aldrin so well lit in the photos when the sun is behind him? Shouldn't he be in shadow? The answer lies in reflection. The moon doesn't emit light, it reflects sunlight. The lunar surface is covered in fine dust and crystals that scatter light in all directions. The bright surface of the moon, the reflective metal of the lunar lander, and even Armstrong's own suit, which reflected 94% of sunlight, acted like massive reflectors, lighting up Buzz Aldrin naturally. No artificial lights were used. Then there's the flag. People ask, why is the flag waving if there's no atmosphere? The answer is simple. It's not waving. The flag had a horizontal rod attached along the top to keep it extended. When the astronauts were planting it, the movement caused it to ripple slightly, and because there's no air resistance on the moon, that motion continued for a few moments, making it look like it was waving. Another doubt, why are there no stars in the photos? That's because of camera exposure. The moon's surface under direct sunlight is extremely bright. The astronauts set their cameras to low exposure to capture the surface details clearly. If they had increased exposure to show the stars, the moon's surface and the astronauts would have been completely overexposed. Just like how your night sky looks black in photos when your face is properly lit. Finally, people point to the footprints and say, how are those possible? The suit's boots have a different pattern, but those prints match the overshoes the astronauts wore over their suits, specially designed for better traction on the dusty surface. So, despite decades of rumors and doubts, the evidence is clear. The Apollo 11 moon landing wasn't fake. It was one of humankind's greatest achievements. But the footprints on the moon are different. Do you think it's a lie? Many people say that and get angry, but it's true. If you see the pattern of the footprints on the suit that Neil Armstrong wore, it's completely different from the footprints seen on the moon. The reason is simple. When he got down, he wore an outer protective overshoe on top of his regular space boots. Why? Because they were going to the moon for the first time ever. No one knew what the surface was like, how rough, sharp, or radioactive it might be. So, to protect the main suit and his feet from any unknown hazards or radiation, he wore an extra protective sole over his boots. The footprint we see on the moon is actually from that outer shoe, not from the inner boot. Some people who try to find scientific faults in this explanation immediately bring up something called the Van Allen belt. The Van Allen radiation belt is a powerful layer of radiation that surrounds the Earth. Our planet's magnetic field traps dangerous particles from the sun, protons, electrons, and high-energy ions, in this region. It acts like a shield, protecting the Earth's surface from deadly solar radiation. Dr. James Van Allen was the first scientist to discover this belt. When it was studied, scientists found that anyone staying too long in this zone would be exposed to high doses of radiation, potentially causing cancer or radiation poisoning. That's why conspiracy theorists argue that no human could have passed through the Van Allen belt without dying from radiation exposure. But NASA had already calculated this. They planned the Apollo 11 mission carefully so that the spacecraft would pass through the thinnest, weakest part of the Van Allen belt. The spacecraft also traveled extremely fast, nearly 27,000 kilometers per hour, so it spent only a very short time in the radiation zone. At that speed and duration, the total radiation dose received by the astronauts was about 0.30 rads, roughly equal to getting a couple of CT scans. That's far below the level that could cause harm. So the Apollo astronauts were never in any real danger. If they had stayed for days in that area, yes, the radiation would have been deadly, but their trajectory and timing were planned precisely to avoid that. NASA even released the landing site photos, the trajectory records, and all the Apollo mission data publicly. Anyone can verify the Apollo landing coordinates today using powerful telescopes or lunar satellites. Yet, despite all this, conspiracy theorists still refuse to believe it. They'll only accept it if someone lands again on the moon, live on camera. Now, NASA's next moon program, the Artemis mission, aims to do exactly that. This time, they're preparing to send the first woman to land on the moon. But even then, some people will keep claiming it's fake, staged, or just another trick. Ignorance is a kind of blindness, and that's the sad truth behind all these moon conspiracy theories.